Welcome and thank you for attending this evening's session. I'd like to hand over now to Professor Kai Rannenberg, who is going to do the introduction and the initial welcomes. Over to you, Kai.
Okay, thanks a lot, David. So welcome everybody to our panel on developing SME cybersecurity resilience in Europe. Actually, we have a welcome message of the host. You know, if it wasn't the pandemic, we would be in the Hessen representation in Brussels. And Mark Weinmeister, Secretary of State for the European Affairs of the State of Hessen, is going to welcome you first.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to warmly welcome you to tonight's panel discussion under the title Developing SME Cybersecurity Resilience in Europe, brought to us by the European Competence Network, built through the Cybersec for Europe research program. And even so, we are still not able to welcome you physically in our presentation due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but I'm particularly pleased that with tonight's event, we are continuing our partnership with Cybersec for Europe and our partners from the Johann Wolfgang Goethe University Frankfurt. Of course, being in direct contact with each other and seeing each other face to face would make the exchange of information and the networking so much easier. But thankfully, the vast opportunities modern information technology can offer these days, and of course the remarkable effort that has been made by Cybersec for Europe to organize virtual events throughout the COVID-19 pandemic still enable us to come together for fruitful exchanges and discussions. With the adoption of the regulation establishing the European Cybersecurity Industrial Technology and Research Competence Center and the network of national coordination centers by the Council on the 20th of April, another step has been taken towards a more secure and resilient cyber environment in the EU. A long discussed dossier is nearing completion, and so questions around its implementation are coming more and more to the fore. How quickly will the new European Centre of Excellence and, above all, the network of national coordination centres be operational? How can the cooperation with representatives of different sectors, such as industry, technology and research, as well as from different member states, be developed in the most profitable way? Your work, ladies and gentlemen, can make important contributions to answering these questions. A central task of the new competence center and the national coordination centers will be to reduce the risk of serious cyber security incidents in view of the progressive shift of people's daily lives and the economy into the digital space. To achieve this, technical and industrial capabilities, as well as the applications of common cybersecurity standards in order to provide the right responses to threat scenarios, will be required. Above all, however, there is a need for comprehensive awareness among the population and the economy of the threats we have to face. Only on the basis of such awareness can competences, capacities and capabilities really contribute to secure cyber environment. In this respect, SMEs will be a key player and not only as part of the European cybersecurity industry. Especially the many small and micro SMEs, which make up a significant part of the European economy, are attractive targets for cyber attacks and need to be better protected. Creating the broadest possible awareness of cybersecurity and building the necessary competencies and capacities in the diverse environment is a major challenge that the new European Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity must address. How can a cyber-resilient or European SME sector be achieved? What can be built upon in this respect, and who will have to play a particularly important role in this process? Answers will also come from you, dear ladies and gentlemen, the thought leaders of CyberSec for Europe. I therefore wish you a successful general meeting with exciting exchanges over the next 2 days. And now I look forward to an interesting debate of our high-level panel on the development of SME cybersecurity resilience in Europe. Thank you for your attendance.
So, if we were in the Hessen representation, you would have received a little drink already and maybe some bites later. Now that we are virtual, we can only give you some virtual bites here, unfortunately, but at least we try our best. And of course, at this moment in time, if you were in the cinema, you would get ice cream. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing. But if you look at the next slide, you see a few virtual bites that we thought out of the work of CyberSec for Europe could be useful for you. But first, a glimpse into the kitchen. CyberSec for Europe has about 10 work packages that I'm not going to list all of them, but we have some work in the area from research and innovation to industry. We're working on education, certification, and standards, and we're doing community building with this event. And these are the 3 areas of work from which I've selected a few of the deliverables of CyberSec for Europe that you will see on the next slide. So that is basically 2 deliverables that have to do with small and medium enterprises and awareness. So there is the first version of the SME Cybersecurity Awareness Program, and there will be other ones following, as you can imagine. Of course, we hope also to profit from this discussion for them. If you're interested in awareness and how to measure its effectiveness, maybe deliverable 9.13 is of interest for you. If you'd like to get a broader overview of what all the pilots, we have 3 sister or brother pilots together with us in this work and are doing 10.2, the summary of our convergence conference from last November may be useful. It has all of the results and lots of minutes and all of the presentations also in it. So quite a big deliverable. Takes some time when you think about downloading it. And if you're mainly interested in where things are going in research and development, D4.4, the research and development roadmap, should be of interest. If you're interested in what beyond the roadmap we see and what can be demonstrated and done already now based on the research results of CyberSec for Europe, and then you want to look into D5.3, the validation of the first round of demonstration cases. Again, of course, they would be moved forward. If we were not virtual, probably we would demonstrate some of them to you in the lobby of the building. And then there is the virtual lab for open source tools in education and research that also may be of interest, especially in the context of our work here. And all of them you can find on the website that is listed, and that's probably also the website that you saw when you registered cybersecforeurope.eu. If you're interested in getting active with us, it's maybe useful to know that meanwhile, there is a number of focus groups done by all of the pilots together. So together done by Concordia, ECHO, Sparta, and of course us, CyberSec for Europe. And the focus group on startups and innovation and SMEs, that one is actually the one that we are Mark Miller from CyberSec for Europe is leading. And if you have any interest in this, please mail him under this address. That may be useful and could be interesting for you, and maybe certainly useful for the work of the focus group. So the next slide should tell you something about the next event that we can offer you. And because meanwhile we also have some webinars, and usually they are on lunchtime, at lunchtime. And the next one is on 17th of May, 12 to 1300 CEST. It is on the development in European regulations. And it will cover some aspects of the GDPR, and it will especially cover also the legislation that is upcoming at the moment with regard to artificial intelligence and, of course, cybersecurity. And it will also mention a number of other regulatory initiatives that are relevant to us in this area. We got two famous speakers, and not only famous, but also very competent in the area for us, and Alessandro Mantelero from Polito in Torino. So, and we have Giuseppe Vasiago working in several areas in legal practices and companies in Milano. So you have somebody from the academic side, and you have also a colleague from practice. And we think that should be interesting for you. And also, of course, it may be useful to remember that we have a Twitter account beside our website. And the more is happening, of course, the more this may be interesting to follow. But now, we look forward to the panel itself. So that will be the panel, and with that, I'm going to hand over back to David Goodman. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you, and thank you to Herr Weinmeister from the representation of the state of Hessen, and particularly to Charlotte from Hessen for all her support in managing the registrations this time and all the other times that we've had these events. Thank you, Charlotte. Moving on to the panel. Before we move on to the panel, a couple of things. I'd ask you, everyone except the panelists, the speakers, to go onto mute. It doesn't help if there's any background noise, and keep your cameras off, which you've done so far, which is great. Thank you. And if you have any questions, we will be taking questions. The way to present them is in the public chat, which you can see at the top of your screens, or you can click on my name and send me a private question if you don't want to do it publicly. But there's no shame in asking questions. So I should also point out that the session is being recorded and will be made available sometime in the next few days on the website. So if you're interested in getting a rerun of this session or sharing it with colleagues, then go to our website or get in touch with me or anybody at Cybersec for Europe, and we will let you know when it is available. So without further ado, we'll move on to the actual panel rather than the solo panels. And I would ask the panelists to switch on their cameras and to keep their mics on, or switch their mics on. And I will introduce you. So first off, we have Martin Überlohr, who is head of cybersecurity industry and innovation at DG Connect in the European Commission. Annika Link, who is senior EU policy manager at the European Digital SME Alliance. Nick Ferguson, who is a partner at Trust IT Services and is involved in cyberwiser.eu and is coordinator for cyberwatching.eu. And last but no means least, Jose Francisco Ruiz, who is from Atos, Spain, and he is the technical coordinator of CyberGeiger. So CyberGeiger is an H2020 project, and I think CyberWiser and CyberWatching, a lot of cybers going on here. I wonder why that is. I believe those are both H2020 projects. They're certainly funded by the European Commission. So there's an awful lot of cyber going on. How much is it reaching SMEs? So my brief introduction is that there are a lot of SMEs out there. The figure that gets bandied around is that there are 99% of businesses in Europe are SMEs. SMEs are businesses less than 250 employees. And that something like 93% are micro SMEs, which means less than 10 employees, which is a staggering number. A lot of entrepreneurs out of there. So given their size, limited resources, and basically that they're trying to make a living and they got better things to think of than cybersecurity. They're more susceptible, more vulnerable than larger companies. How do we help them? How do we train them? How do we support them? How do we reach out to them? And this is what we want to try and explore this evening with our distinguished guests. So I'd like to start with you, Martin. Thank you for joining us. And Nico, I wish we all had a drink. Martin, from a commission perspective, could you give us an insight and overview on what the commission is planning to do to, we've already seen that there are several projects here, and there are others that obviously are not here. It's a massive task. I know it's a priority. What are the Commission's plans, and how do you see the new centre in Bucharest helping things out?
Hi, David. Hi, hello to our audience. I'm very pleased to be here with you this evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. And let me start with a few kind of overall remarks, and then I am looking forward to a very interesting debate to go a bit deeper into the different points. So I'll probably raise kind of a few issues and a few kind of policies of ours, and then we go deeper in the discussion. Maybe if I can start with some facts from a study that our colleagues in ENISA carried out at the end of last year. So they surveyed 250 SMEs from 25 member states, and some of the results are that 36% of the respondents had experienced an incident, cybersecurity incident, within the previous 5 months. A large majority had, very basic cybersecurity measures in place. So they had antivirus, they had backups, and they had a firewall. But only less than 30% had, more advanced cybersecurity measures in place, such as having appointed an information security officer, having a business continuity, or disaster recovery plan. Some of the challenges that SMEs are facing, and I'm also looking forward very much to the remarks from my co-panelists, in particular Annika. Some of the challenges that my colleagues in ENISA found that SMEs are facing were related to awareness, simply to budgetary and resource constraints, also to constraints in terms of management support, human resources and skills and expertise in IT and IT security. They thought they did not have the right tools or guidelines at their disposal to deal with this issue. And another specific issue was the issue of so-called shadow IT, where the company IT policy is poorly resourced, and then people help themselves by bringing their own devices and using kind of services for company work, which are actually not part of any kind of company policy, let alone security policy. So what is happening in terms of policy, concretely? Who's helping SMEs today? Because I think that would be a lot of our discussion today will be what can be done, what has to be done more, where can we start from? Are we starting from zero? There are some good practices in the member states. I would like to point out a few. In Belgium, the CCB, which is kind of the state cybersecurity agency, supports SMEs by publishing guidelines, online tools, and any relevant information. The ANSSI in France, I'm sure most of you have heard of it, among other things, runs a portal where affected SMEs are invited to report incidents and can start getting help in that way. And then another example, rather from a small member state, is in Luxembourg, where the good colleagues from Security Made in Luxembourg actually carry out kind of consultancy work, if you would like, targeting SMEs. Our colleagues in ENISA are trying to support SMEs and help SMEs. Among other things, they are working on guidelines addressing SMEs. They're working on the development of online tools for awareness raising. And they, obviously, what they do best is making recommendations for member states. So then how does, before going a bit more into the details of what we as Commission are doing or plan to do, how does this fit into the broader context? I'm sure you've heard of our new cybersecurity strategy. We put it out in 2020. There's, of course, a whole array of measures targeting critical infrastructures. I will not go through all of them. I would like just to point out that there is kind of a big kind of pillar on investment, and then we get to the competence center and to the programs. There's a pillar on skills, and there's also the digital innovation hubs, which the Commission is setting up together with member states to support digitization more broadly, that will also have an important role to play in covering cybersecurity. We have the Cybersecurity Competence Center network. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. We will have a regulation. I think in 2 weeks from now, the Parliament will adopt it, and then it will be published finally after some blood, sweat, and tears. It builds on the good work done in the context of the contractual public-private partnership on H2020, where the Commission collaborated with EXO, the European Cybersecurity Organization, and EXO has now developed into an organization of 260 stakeholders, all in one way or another related to cybersecurity and technology. And EXO will certainly have an important role to play also going forward. And last but not least, we have the 4 pilot projects, among them Cybersec for Europe, which are also kind of the predecessors of the cybersecurity technology community, which is kind of formally set up through the regulation. So the regulation foresees a center in Bucharest. So far, it almost exists on paper, but in the meantime, the Commission does the work. So we're doing the kind of double work of the content and setting up the center, which will be in Bucharest, and I hope we start having really people there on the ground not too long from now. We're setting up a network of national coordination centers, which we can also support financially for them to support stakeholders in their member states. And I think that's one other powerful kind of lever through which we might actually reach SMEs, because SMEs are difficult to reach from the remote town of Brussels. And obviously there's the community, which is kind of recognized in the regulation as basically the demos of cybersecurity technology in Europe. And last but not least, we also have the funding programs, Horizon Europe. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. And we will hear from Horizon Europe projects today about what concretely such projects can do for SMEs. And what's newer, though, is the Digital Europe program, which has a big cybersecurity pillar, and which will support the rollout of different cybersecurity topics and tools. And it will, among other things, focus on the uptake of best cybersecurity practices and also certification. And with that, it will target very much SMEs. It will also have funding available for skills in cybersecurity. So for example, setting educational programs in the area of cybersecurity. So this is an interesting new tool that we're putting in place. But with that, I'm sorry I was a bit long. I wanted to give you kind of a bit of a tour d'horizon so that we can later on kind of hook into the different themes. With that, thank you very much for bearing me, and I'm looking forward to a good discussion.
Thank you, Martin. I think most people will know that you're from DG Connect. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, thank you. I thought, yes, so I'm a head of sector in DG Connect.
That's fine.
We're in one of the 2 cybersecurity units.
Yeah, no, that's all great. The question I was going to ask was, you're from DG Connect, but there are other groups within the Commission that are also looking at SMEs. It would be nice to think that what you're doing and what the, I can't remember the acronym now, COSME is doing are working hand in glove around the area of cybersecurity awareness. Is that justified, that hope?
We do our best. We do our best. I think it works well. I think we see that we have, you know, kind of a good mix between what we, let's say, horizontal tools addressing a different group or different specific topic, and then vertical kind of tools and policies focusing on cybersecurity specifically. So it's I think it's a potentially powerful mix.
Great. That's the kind of message we want to hear. Thank you. Anika, I'd like to turn to you now. In the introduction, I mentioned you're from the Digital SME Alliance. Not everybody necessarily knows what the Digital SME Alliance is or what it does, but it's the European Digital SME Alliance, I should say. There are other alliances at national level. So perhaps you could tell us something about your organization and, broadly speaking, what it is that you're doing to help with cybersecurity awareness for SMEs.
Yes, thank you very much, David, and good to meet also the other panelists. And yeah, thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. Yeah, Digital SME or European Digital SME Alliance is a network of about 20,000 SMEs in the ICT sector. As David explained, SMEs are companies that have less than 250 employees and less than 50 million revenue. Our companies are those in the ICT sector. So we have different companies, only not so many actually. And then we have IoT companies developing IoT solutions or data consultancy. Sorry, I just had a message that my connection is bad. I hope you can hear me. Anyway, so yeah, a variety of companies in the ICT sector. And what we do with our working group, so we work with different, as explained, we are a network of 20,000 SMEs, but we have national and regional associations as our direct members, and then those organizations associate the companies at the local level. And with these companies, however, we form working groups. So we have different working groups focusing on different areas. One of the working groups focuses on cybersecurity, and here we have SMEs and members from our association, and they help us to develop, for instance, policy positions and responses to the proposals coming from the European Commission. So we always try to bring in the perspective from SMEs in the ICT sector to the discussion. I wanted to talk a little bit about our thoughts generally on cyber security resilience in Europe, and then I guess at a later stage we'll discuss a bit more. So yeah, like in 2019 we actually also did a study where we were looking at the hurdles inside an organization to really adopt cybersecurity solutions. And at the time, well, one of the things, of course, that is relevant is that cyber is often perceived as a cost, first of all, rather than something that brings immediate benefits. So when it comes to other like emerging technologies such as AI or I don't know, use of big data, etc., the companies would rather maybe see the benefits of that, whereas of course cybersecurity is first of all something that is a cost, and you will only feel happy that you improved your cybersecurity level after the damage is done. Like, you know, if you had an attack, you'll be like, okay, great, I'm more or less prepared. Or you're not prepared, and then the damage is done, and then your business, you may have a major issue, a major cost, but there is no immediate business case, like immediate return on investing in that. So that is a hurdle. And also at the in SMEs in particular, as mentioned, we have a lot of micro SMEs. So a lot of these tasks, they fall on the table of the CEO, and if perhaps they have an IT person, then the IT person is taking care of all of that. But the capacity inside an organization is usually quite limited. So at the time with the study, we really looked, or one of the recommendations was to really try to increase the capabilities at the organizational level and at the individual level, raise awareness with the management CEO that you need to increase the level of protection or cybersecurity, but you also need to invest in training and skills. And also, I think some of the studies show that really large companies, they do that to a very large extent, like 91% teach their employees ICT-related security issues, and then for the small ones, it's only 58%. So there's a big difference, a big gap also in providing training to the individual employees. So and then we also connected that to how this awareness and the training could be spread in the ecosystem, so in the environment that the companies interact, because of course SMEs, they usually work for business partners and B2B relationships. Well, of course, some are also have, you know, work in B2C, but a lot of them are actually connected to other companies and supply chains and through business partnerships. And here, one of the recommendations was also to really take that into account, to help spread awareness through the local chambers of commerce, but also maybe even through assurance providers, because usually SMEs, they would talk to an insurance provider once per year or to their local accountant once per year. And if there were mechanisms that would help them raise awareness, that could be like a go-to person. So, but also all of that actually to say or to explain, it's really important not to consider an SME as one single entity, right? Like we already said, there are differences in terms of the size. So you have micro SMEs, small ones, and well, then in Germany you even have those between 250 and 500 employees, which are still considered medium-sized. But what is also important is to cluster them according to the digital capabilities, to their digital maturity level. Because of course, if you have an ICT SME, like in our membership, those companies are much more prone to actually already know what they're doing. Whereas if you have companies that are only buying ICT solutions and employing them or only using them, they may not have this level. Then you have the companies that are maybe usually just in an offline environment, and the only connection to digital is that they maybe have a web shop or that they maybe interact with their customers online. So I think this is a really important part of the analysis when we want to do something to increase the level of cybersecurity of SMEs, is to understand these different levels of digital maturity, because the measures have to be adapted to that. So maybe I'll stop here and then we can discuss a bit later.
Thank you, Anika. A couple of things. You mentioned that you're an association of the alliance of 20,000 SMEs, which is a lot. It's a drop in the ocean in 25 million, but it's still a lot. What percentage of the 20,000 do you think are, in your words, as you were finishing up there, ICT companies or ICT savvy companies versus people who organize companies that have basically no idea about ICT or have to buy in their technology? Do you have any?
Well, in our membership, the companies are actually all ICT companies. So you have 20,000 ICT companies that that are part of our network, and they're associated via the national regional associations. So, okay, some of them have maybe a little bit of a different membership structure. So they may have some sort of less digital mature companies as part of it. Yeah, so we would have to go down at the national level and check for each one to answer your question very precisely. But I think the estimate is still that it's close to those 90% of those 20,000 would be IT savvy.
That's really not surprising. The other thing that was interesting as you were talking, I was thinking that you started off by saying that most SMEs see this as a cost and no direct benefit, which is very much the way that I personally feel about paying for insurance, whether it's car insurance, home insurance, or whatever it is. And cybersecurity is a lot like that. Obviously, when you get on a major scale, it becomes a different thing. But when you're a small organization, it does feel like paying insurance. And you did talk about working with insurance providers, which are seemingly a sensible route for talking to the vast swathe of SMEs that it's difficult to reach out to. Insurance providers, accountants, or banks, the organizations that little companies rely on an everyday basis. So yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things that, well, when we did this study, we discussed in a couple of workshops, and that was one of the takeaways from the experts that were gathered around the table there, that indeed that you need to work with intermediaries. I guess there are several ways of really reaching all SMEs, but intermediaries are important. And they can be, as you said, insurance providers, accountants, but also, of course, local networks, business networks, chambers of commerce, etc.
Great. Thank you, Anika. I'd like to turn to Nick. Nicholas Ferguson is from Trust IT Services and involved in two projects, cyberwiser.eu and cyberwatching, both of which have reached out to SMEs in different ways with assessment programs and registries. Anyway, I'm going to leave it to you, Nick, to tell us what you're doing in the context of this evening's discussion. You're on mute, Nick. You're still on mute. We can't hear you. No, that's muted again. Afraid not, no. How about you log back in again, and we'll pick up with Jose in the meantime. Okay. While Nick is adjusting his system. Jose, could I turn to you?
Yeah, you can hear me now.
I can hear you perfectly, yes.
Okay. Sorry, Nick, I hacked you. That's why you cannot talk.
Can you hear me now?
I
Go
okay,
ahead.
problem solved.
Okay. Where were we? Nick, over to you. Tell us what you do.
Okay. Apologies. Yeah. So I work for Trust IT Services and actually work for an SME. So which was a micro SME. You know, when I started, we had 4 employees. We had 1 room and we had 1 toilet, which was also used for private calls. Since then, we've grown, luckily, where we don't use the toilet like that anymore, and we have over 50 people working for us. So I think we qualify as an SME now. So we specialize in strategic communications, in particular for EC funded activities for projects, and we lead the dissemination services for the Commission's new Horizon Results Booster. So therefore, you know, I really understand the pressures that SMEs are under, and also the value that the research community can bring and support to SMEs. And we also understand the value for a company like ours to actually take project results to beyond the project lifetime, so it becomes an asset for the company, if you like. For a cybersecurity point of view, I coordinate the cyberwatching.eu project, which is a coordination support action, and we are coming to the end of our project lifetime, and therefore we have a number of project results which are interesting for today. Firstly, one of our main targets is the project community, and we have a radar, a visual representation of all projects which have been funded under cybersecurity. The projects are mapped by a high-level taxonomy, by the JRC cybersecurity taxonomy, and they are also mapped through a self-assessment on their market and technology readiness levels and their position in their project lifetime. We also provide a marketplace, so an online place where all results can also be published. So we, you know, there are lots of projects out there, each with their own website, quite difficult to find. So, you know, we've tried to address this issue by providing information which the projects can update themselves in one place, and then people can go and visit the individual websites if they like. But the key thing is that there are many results coming from projects. I know a number of Jose's projects in particular, where you have, you know, a consortium of respected partners and experts in cybersecurity or legal issues who come together and provide a resource for SMEs, which is of value. So we do this too. We have a number of events and online resources which are targeting the SME community, and Digital SME Alliance is one of our partners, and they're very important in terms of providing you know, freemium, free information, free guidance on cybersecurity best practices. We have a seal which is coming out next month, directly targeting SMEs. GDPR information, a GDPR temperature tool, an information notices tool, and a risk management tool. So these are all things which we push towards SMEs. They have, well, they come from an independent group of organizations who are funded publicly by the European Commission. And this is a nice badge to promote to SMEs. And we're also involved in, we have just finished the CyberWiser project, which again provided capacity building services to SMEs for the use of cyber ranges, which is now being sustained beyond program 2. we organised a number of online and hands-on training activity that we really saw in these now with where, you know, companies at home work for an SME, and the type of information, you know, a lot of interest on this type of SMEs. Echo something like Mark. The challenge in actually reaching SMEs is a big one when you're, you know, inside our research field. It's very difficult to get SMEs interested often. I can understand why, because, you know, sending an employee to go and do some training on a topic which, as David said, is like seen as an extra, could be difficult. You know, you've got to send somebody away for a day. That costs money. They're not doing what they're maybe supposed to do. So, you know, it's an investment for companies and not necessarily a cheap one. So I think these types of resources, which are of high quality from R&I projects, are really interesting. And I think multiplier organizations, etc., are very, very important to reach their target.
Thank you, Nick. One of the things that we've observed is that there are a lot of programs, and going to the Cyberwatching website, it's very easy to see how many there are, and it's a very useful resource. A lot of programs, a lot of opportunities, free and through consultancies, to get training for SMEs. So I guess there are two things that spring to mind. Is there too much? Is the lack of coordination confusing? And do we have any idea as to the effectiveness of the programs and the training exercises that we're talking about? And obviously you can't talk about everything, but the ones that you've been responsible through these two projects, do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, so firstly, you're absolutely right. You know, there are a lot of resources for an SME. If you do a Google search, then probably you're going to come across, you know, private companies offering these types of services. I'm not sure how many EC funded projects are good at managing a Google Ads campaign or making sure that their, you know, their tools are high up in a search, which the average person would do. So I think, you know, what we've tried to do in our project is collect results from and showcase them in our radar, in our marketplace. But I think, you know, an organization like Anisa or like EXO, who have you know, a trusted name, the EC stamp of a Britain, you know, they are vehicles for the raising awareness of cybersecurity. Perhaps, you know, pooling these resources in one place could be a very nice resource. The other point, which is important though, is that these resources, there are many of them, and they need to be updated. We've seen this with our GDPR temperature tool, which we published, I think, around a year and a half ago, and we are now updating it because recommendations have changed, and they need to be improved, basically. Monitoring is extremely important, and we try to do this actively in terms of providing events where maybe the tool is used before and people have a chance to engage with the experts who provided the tool. But, you know, that if you're providing any such resource, the people who use it are your community. So you need to, they're like customers, if you like. So any business knows that they have to look after and nurture their customers. So it's the same here. It's quite difficult with projects because they are funded for a period, and then the funding stops, and then the resource may stay online, and, you know, and it could go out of date. That's a concern.
Now I'm on mute. And there is something that could be done about that, some kind of coordination. You mentioned earlier on that you're coming out with, I can't remember which project was, a seal next month. Do you want to explain briefly what that's about and why anybody could be interested, as it were?
Yes, it is. It's another awareness raising service. It's kind of like a checklist to have SMEs really get into the frame of mind of thinking about areas around certification. So best practices. Attaining certification for an SME is a non-starter. It costs too much. It's too resource heavy.
Yeah.
So this is basically provides a checklist that they can answer yes, no to from the majority of the questions, and then they receive a score at the end. If they have over 70%, then they receive the seal. And it's a lightweight way to get an SME to think about cybersecurity best practices, and it's been done in collaboration with SGS. And beyond that, we launch it next month, and beyond that, it will be sustained by our partner AEI and used on the Cybersecurity Innovation Hub. So it's been very important for us to work with an organization like SGS. It will have their logo will be present there, so that is a trusted logo, more than our project logo, for example. So it's a useful and important resource. So we're quite excited about this release of
it. It sounds like a valuable thing to do. One of the questions that we got given earlier was, are there plans for the EU institutions to be obliged to obligate SMEs to require at least a lightweight cybersecurity certificate from all of its vendors and their supply chain? So I guess that would be a question for Martin. Is there any thinking that you mentioned supply chain and Anika also. Is there any suggestion that this could be something that the institutions could pick up one day? You're on mute. Right.
It's an important question. I think, in general, we're careful with regulatory obligations, especially on SMEs. The approach in the NIS directive has been, that the more critical an entity is, the more stringent the security requirements should be, and of course it is possible for SMEs to end up falling under the NIS directive, and also in its revised form, which is being negotiated. And there are also part of the proposal are kind of enhanced requirements actually on the company management to responsibilize, the top of a company, that to make them, more attentive to the issue of security and to incentivize investment, so as to avoid the situation which has been mentioned by several already, that we always invest in insurance, or we invest in kind of security locks, the day after the house has been burgled. But regarding requirements affecting kind of all the many thousands SMEs in Europe, to be fair, we're careful with that.
Thank you, Martin. Last but not least, I'd like to turn to Jose. who is technical coordinator of an H2020 project called Cyber and rather than me trying to explain what it's about, I'll leave it up to Jose to do that. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the invitation. So yes, I'm Jose Francisco Ruiz from Atos. I am participating as a technical coordinator in the Geiger project. This project derives from a past project called SMEsec, from which I was the project coordinator of that one as a whole. 3 years project, and this is a continuation, let's say, of it. And kind of in both of them, what we wanted to build is basically the topic that we have here in this panel discussion, about how we can develop, create, build cybersecurity for SMEs. In the past project, as I was commenting, it was more focusing on the technical aspects, while in the Geiger project, let's say that we are focusing in both pillars that Nick was commenting before. That nowadays I think are very necessary for SME. On the one hand, the technical solutions, on the other hand, the awareness and the training. One without the other cannot be understood, and it is impossible to make an SME understand why cybersecurity is important if they don't even know why it is important, which I think is something that can be applied to anything in general. So in that aspect, I have been working in this field of the cybersecurity for SMEs for plenty of years already. I had actually done nice and long discussions with Nick about this topic in the past, and etc. If I will say about my experiences in this field and what I have seen in Europe in general, I think I will focus on two specific aspects. That's why I think that it is kind of the problem of how, for this SME cybersecurity resilience in Europe. I will say even that maybe developing is not the correct word, but I will say more for building. Why? Because as Nick, for example, was saying before, we have from different European research projects, we have so many solutions of cybersecurity. Probably that, when he start compiling all of these solutions, you can find some of them that, they were, if not by this, will be very, very difficult to find. So we have indeed cybersecurity solutions in Europe. And then the question will be, then why are we still not tackling this aspect of cybersecurity in the SMEs, no? And in this way, I will say two main things that I have learned from the SMEs, working with them, both in the official way in projects and research, and then in the second one, which is in a more non-official way, having some drinks and talking about their day-to-day and about how difficult everything is for them. First of all, I will say that they don't understand the solutions. I mean, let us be clear. For an SME, the first thing, their main priority, more critical aspect, everything is money. Why? Because they need it to survive. That's how it is. That's how it is. So in that aspect, you have to understand that if they see cybersecurity, they don't see what I, as a cybersecurity expert, see. They see something that consumes time, effort, I don't know, people, resources, everything. And it's not bringing immediate benefits to them, which I think Nick was commenting exactly about this topic before. So one very important aspect is to understand, let's say for the SMEs, how cybersecurity is beneficial for them, because they know how beneficial it is after they have been the victim of an attack, like probably to all of us happened. When was the last time that you changed your password? Well, don't think about that. Probably it's not a good idea. Whenever you have a problem, then it will be when you think, oh, I should have paid this extra money for this solution, this extra money for this solution. So I will say that one of the main issues for them is understanding how cybersecurity is important for them. But as I say, I can understand. I work in the cybersecurity area. Not even to my parents, I talk about cybersecurity because it's a waste of time. I just tell them I work in computers, and that's better for them. So after talking with a lot of companies of SMEs, that was something that we checked. And if you go even to ask them, so for this amazing solution, it can protect your servers, it can protect your password, your employees, whatever. How much would you pay? And I will pay, I don't know, 100 euros. every 3 months or something like that. Like, dude, you really have no idea of what you are talking about. Not even in the scope of the pricing, you have no idea of how this works. So this awareness, this understanding of cybersecurity, this is something that it doesn't matter how many solutions we put on top of them or give to them. It's like everything. If you don't understand what it is, you're not really going to be attracted to it. And for me, it's a very difficult thing for cybersecurity, which is to make it attractive to these SMEs for them to really, I want to buy, I want to use it, okay? The other aspect I will say very important is that, and kind of follows with this one, is that when they see solutions, what they understand is kind of like an antivirus. So say, I'm going to the market, I'm going to buy this antivirus, which also brings anti-malware, and I don't know, whatever it brings, this is what I'm going to have in my system. Does this really fulfill all your needs? They don't know. They kind of go for these solutions that are very specific, very general, sorry, and that's what they use. So at least they say, at least I am trying. I'm having my antiviruses, I'm having my, I don't know, whatever solutions in my system, and this is the best I can do. So for most of them also, they feel like going to the market is difficult because they don't understand what kind of solution is the best for them, let's say, best fitting for them, no, best in the slot, as I will say. And if we can even take into account the money, then that's worse. So are the majority of the cybersecurity solutions that are built too general and generic, and they don't really fit with what they need? Probably Nick even know more about this than I do. But very probably they are more thinking on large companies and etc. And not really for this target. So you have to see then that thinking on this way for an SME, you go into a very weird area context where there are a lot of different solutions that you don't understand if they fit for you. Maybe most of them are like killing flies with cannonballs basically, and also you don't even understand why it's so important to have it in your company. So this, for me, these 2 points are the more critical for as I say, for building this cybersecurity resilience for the SME. So and mostly focuses on this understanding. Finally, I will comment that together with this, for the awareness that we were commenting before and etc., I think it's something that I don't know, maybe Martin has a better overview from the European point of view, but the awareness, I know when I was studying in the university, I had only one small, part for cybersecurity, and it was not the best, I mean, in terms of expertise. So it's something that you kind of learn by yourself. So I will say that maybe we have to try to make cybersecurity more, day-to-day, more normal for everyone in Europe, so we understand how important it is. Because if not, I say, we only learn, unfortunately, about this when something fails and when something goes wrong. And then, unfortunately, for the SMEs, usually, if they are the target of a ransomware attack or something like that, usually they just stop working. That's how it is, and that's very scary. And that means that they are not really going to go to the digital transformation, because the more digital I go. I mean, if I have my notebook here with all my numbers, I have it here. No one can steal it. It's mine. If I go to the cloud, maybe someone will steal it, or I will not be able to access it. Then my business will go to shit. So I think that for me, honestly, was some of the more important aspect was covering this part of how to make cybersecurity attractive and understandable for the SMEs. Second, for having solutions that can really tackle the needs of the SMEs. And as I said, from my point of view, it not only fits on the technical view, but also on the performance and the budget view. And I say here with very big words, the budget part. When we were in this past project, and also now working even in Geiger, one of the use cases is a hairdresser. It's amazing talking with her about cybersecurity, because it's like very, very different. But of course, you then understand that your goal in this is, how can I make cybersecurity understandable for her? This translation, this way to try to go to this level to understand it, is really important, and I will say very you have to do a lot of effort for that. We are so much used to the complex stuff in cybersecurity that whenever someone asks you, can you please explain to me in a simple way for me to understand, I think that's the more important, and that's why I say that I see this problem of making people understand cybersecurity, because we have the experts here, we're working here, then the people of the SMEs are working in here. There is here this amazing gap. And I say, for me, it doesn't matter how many solutions you throw to this hole, it's not never going to get filled. So you have to build these bridges. That's why I was saying maybe building SME cybersecurity resilience is a more interesting topic. Well, that's my point of view, just to try not consume a lot of time.
Thank you, Jose. One of the fascinating things about the CyberGiga or Giga project, it's got some of the best known companies in cybersecurity and academic institutions. And then, as you just mentioned, it has Coiffure Loredana, which is a ladies' hairdressing salon. And it's like, whoa, what on earth is that doing there? So I think that, this was a question that I posed earlier on to Anika. How difficult is it, number one, to find a non-IT organization like Loredana, and how much effort did it take, never mind for them, but for you to bring them up to speed? And I'd be interested to know how they, the salon, I presume it's a micro SME, got involved in the project. Did you approach them, or?
Well, I think that they were the hairdresser of one of the partners of the project. So it was one of the ideas. That's the best ideas always start with something simple like this.
That was what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, as I say, it's very challenging in the good way about how to make them involved. When we started contacting them for participating in the proposal, of course, it was like, why exactly do I need cybersecurity? They have, I think, they are 2-3 people. I think there are 3 people, and they have only one laptop, like a personal laptop or like an Excel file, whatever, and their phones for working here and there. So making them understand, but that let's say that your structure, your business structure is extremely common in the European Union. So your type of business is, I would say, one of the more common that exist right now. These small companies, 2, 3, 4, 5 people with, just only one laptop and not even having the antivirus. I remember my sister, when she was working with my father in a small company, she didn't even have an antivirus. I was like, dude, even Windows remind you every one and then to install an antivirus. It's not that complex. So trying to make them understand, first of all, for the need for cybersecurity for participating in the proposal was a good one. But then when we were telling them about how it could improve, let's say, in the way of, okay, let's because of course you tell them cybersecurity, and the first thing that you think is, I don't know, encryption, passwords, and and a lot of very crazy science things. But the idea that we told them was, dude, the idea is that we are going to provide you a solution that you are going to have to be able to interact with it only the minimum necessary at your level. So it is not going to tell you to install a specific agent or to have, like a specific router in your company, something like that. But we are going to ask you for information or to work with it in a very friendly user way. And the information that we are going to provide you also will be very and the more friendly user way that we can. So that way you can really benefit for it. Because if they don't see what is the benefit from them, or if they think what way we are going to provide to them is something too complex to understand, then of course they will not be attracted. So we have to make them more see, we are going to provide you information about what is the status, or let's say the cybersecurity situation of your system, company. And we also are going to be able to provide you recommendations about what will be the best cybersecurity, steps to make, like install maybe an antivirus or install this solution, try to make it automatized as much as possible. So then you can benefit from